Hi and welcome back for another Tool Time Tuesday. I'm Melissa Muir. Following up on last week's video where I showed you how to do various hooks and clasps for your necklaces or bracelets or whatever you might need, I figured today I would show you a couple of simple head pins. When I very first got started into making jewelry, I was making or just using head pins from like the craft store, and I found that they weren't always tempered the same, they weren't always the same size, and so sometimes they were very difficult to use and they were rather boring and plain. So I figured today I would show you a simple head pin variety that then you can use in your pieces, and it might help to dress things up a little bit. So today I'm going to be just working with 20 gauge wire. I've cut off probably about 1.5 feet here that I'm working with. I like to kind of work on the spool, and that way I have a little bit less waste. So one of the very first simple head pins that I ever did was by taking a pair of chain nose pliers. So again, we have that nice flat inside to this, but I've also coming to a really fine tip. In this case, this is a pair of Tronics pliers, but really any plier you have will do. And the first thing that I want to do is I want to take this wire, and at the very tip of it, I'm going to turn it around into a U. And by doing this, I'm creating basically like a little stopper. And now I'm going to use my pliers to kind of pinch that shut. Okay, and that gives me a little head pin, and I can straighten that out. And if I feed my bead into this, it will stop depending on the hole inside of my bead. So that's one idea. Take that, clip it, and set that one aside. So the next head pin that I like to use is a little bit more decorative. It has like a little flower on the end of that. I don't know what else to call it other than a flower. And for this one, we are going to use our round nose pliers. So I want to use something that is very fine, especially since I'm using 20 gauge wire. If I were using something thicker, then I'd probably go up to maybe my Wubbers or a more sturdy plier there on the end. So what I'm going to do first of all is I'm going to just bring this around into a very tiny little loop, like so. Then I'm going to place my pliers on the next, or just right next to that loop. See if you guys can see that there a little better. But so it just sits right up next to it. And I'm going to turn again a loop coming right behind it. And now I have two little loops. And I'm going to again place my pliers just next to the loop that I have created and come around one more time and back out the top. And now I have this fun little flower here. And then my beads will nestle right up next to that little flower in there. So that's a really fun little head pin as well. The next one that I like to do, I will just turn a very simple spiral. And when I very first began, I started this all the same way as I began with my little turned U pin, I guess you could call that, just like that little hairpin turn. So again, I'm going to pinch this just like I did with that first hairpin turn. And sometimes it's a little tricky. You can see it wants to turn on me. And so it might take you a couple of tries to get this, but just be gentle with it and just gently coax that closed. Okay, and you'll see I actually have ever so slight of a little opening in there, and that's completely fine for this one. What I'm going to do is hold it inside of my jaws of my pliers so that I can still see that first little outer edge, and I'm going to use my thumb, and I'm going to release and move, and I'm just going to spiral this around so that the coil lays down next to itself. And then we get this fun little spiral. And I use my thumbnail just to kind of create that little crook of the neck there. And now we have a spiral head pin. going to clip that one off. Now the next head pin works very, very similar. So we start off with this little hairpin turn. We're going to then create the spiral, and then we'll add a couple little corners to that. And that gives us a fun design as well. So first things first, get that little hook turned in there and then collapse it down onto itself. Next, we're going to create that spiral. Like so. Now, I'm going to take the very tips of my chain nose pliers and I'm going to place it right next to the spiral. And I'm going to pull it over. And you can see now we've got kind of this little teardrop look to that. And again, I'm going to place my plier, same exact position, up against that spiral one more time and bend one more. And now we have that flat side. Going to do this one more time. And then here at the top of this, give that a little bend. And now we have a triangle. And take that one off. So you can see kind of that progression if we start with the spiral, well, the pinched edge, then we move into the spiral, and then we move over here to the little triangle. Now you can do all kinds of things like this one. I've seen people who do stars. I'm not that great when it comes to doing the stars. Everything turns out wonky, so I avoid the stars. But they're beautiful when people do them. You can also do square, you can do the star, you can do little squiggles. You can see how easy it is to change that. And again, it just takes a little bit of imagination on your part. So that's something to kind of think about. Now, another very simple head pin that people use a lot is they will take their wire and ball up the end of that. So let me show you how to do that really quickly. In this case, I'm going to use a very small blazer torch. It's just a really small one. And I'm also using a fireproof surface. In this case, it's a solderite pad, which is basically like a magnesium board. Okay, it's going to help reflect that, but also protect my work surface from anything. Now, what I like to do is I like to stand my torch on my tabletop, and that way then I don't have to run or worry about doing anything with the torch. I am going to take my head pin. I'm going to actually cut this down just a little bit. So I've got about, it looks like about 3-inch length here that I'm working with. I'll cut a couple of these. So what I like to do is I'll get it ready by placing this into my cross-locking tweezers. They're insulated, so there's wood on this, and what that does is it allows the heat to go ahead and come back up here, but not burn me because the wood won't direct that heat towards me. So now I have my wire placed into my cross-locking tweezers, and I'm basically going to dip it into the flame once I get this going, and I'm going to watch for that little ball to appear. Get the torch going, and we're just going to tip it into the very tip of that blue flame on my torch, and now you can see there's a little ball. Now I know this might be a little bit difficult to see from the camera angle, and I wish there were a way for me to do it a little easier, but basically I'm working right here. There's the tip, my flame has a blue cone inside, and then it has a further cone, and what I want to do is just put this right there into that blue tip, and it's not really showing up on the video, but when I do this, I see an orange flame that shoots out, and that tells me that I'm in the right place. And so now I have another little ball. Put that into my quench water. And again, last one really quick. Like so. And now I'm going to turn off my torch. Again, put that into the quench, and we are done. So you see that my silver has now kind of got this black oxidized look. That just needs to go into a pickle, and that will clean that right up. But there are my 3 balled up head pins, and you saw how quick that was. So hopefully that helps you to get some ideas when it comes to head pins. These can be as simple as you want them to be, and they can be as elaborate as you want them to be. Just use your creativity and your imagination, and I'm sure you'll come up with something great. Because if you're already taking the time to create a handmade piece, why would you want a mass-produced head pin? Not to say that there aren't some beautiful head pins out there, because there are, but this definitely gives you a way to take a very simple piece of wire and put your own spin on it. As always, if you like my video, be sure to give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe and mark the little bell so that you receive notifications for when I place new items or new videos out here on YouTube. I try to do that every week, but I'm a busy mom, so it doesn't always happen, but I do try my best. As I've asked for before, if you have questions or comments, please leave them in the comment section. I love to hear what you have to say. I love questions. It helps to guide for new videos as well. I don't always get to all of them, but I do my best. I hope to see you guys again next week. Thank you for joining me.